All right then. Hello, willkommen, bienvenue. It's time for another Amish Inquisition, episode 422, on Sunday the 3rd of May, 2026. I'm Phil.
I'm Ben.
And I am Matt.
And tonight we're very happy to be joined by author, researcher, journalist Marcus Gibson. Are you reading us, Marcus?
I am indeed. Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you. It was John Hart, wasn't it? We had,
Yes.
I believe, an acquaintance, friend of yours, John Hart.
Yes, he is. He's a very good man.
Yes, we were talking to him, a couple of months ago, maybe 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, I think so.
And he said, do you want to get my mate Marcus on? He's written a very interesting, compelling book about World War II and the bombing campaigns. And so here we are. So, yeah, thanks very much for joining us. But, I mean, by way of introduction, maybe tell everyone watching, listening at home a bit about your backstory and how you ended up doing this book.
Yes, well, I'm a sort of a research journalist. I worked for the BBC and then the Telegraph, the European newspaper, and then finally the FT. And 2 years ago, I thought it would be a good idea to look at the whole question of Bomber Command, which, as you know, is probably the most controversial aspect of World War II, certainly from the Britain's point of view. And so I applied my meager research capabilities to the subject and came up with an awful lot of interesting information and data.
Excellent. So, sorry, we're just experiencing some technical issues. So, when you started researching the book, then Marcus, is there anything in your sort of background when you were sort of developing your career as it stood before that kind of led you to where you are to wanting to research this? Was there any sort of trigger to?
Yes, I had relatives who'd been in the Royal Air Force, including one uncle who was a navigator on mosquitoes, a very, very interesting man. Also, my father had been a frontline doctor from D-Day all the way to Hamburg at the end of the war. And I'd met many of the RAF veterans over the years. And also, when I worked for the European newspaper in the 1990s, part of my beat as a business reporter was to go to Germany, and I visited very many of the big companies in Germany. And many of the directors there were either veterans of the war or works managers, and they were the first really to tell me just how incredibly effective and devastating the RAF campaign really was. And they all said they couldn't really understand why so much literature in Britain turned around and claimed that it wasn't effective. For them that was inexplicable.
Tell us a bit more about that, Marcus. What's been the story since the war ended? What's the sort of picture that's been painted about RAF Bomber Command and why you have a problem with it?
I mean, there's something like 450 books on Bomber Command,
right,
many of which are actually very good. They talk about operations, individuals, squadrons, aircraft, and all of that. But the overall, the most well-known ones all say that the campaign was ineffective. It was completely wrong, especially the policies instituted by Air Marshal Harris. And that finally the Americans came in and got the thing running. And by the end of the war, no weapon system, for example, had been completely shut out from production, etc., etc. As well, of course, the moral factor of killing hundreds of thousands of so-called innocent German civilians. So that was the conventional narrative which the British publishing industry put out. And when I realized that when the Allies, Western Allies, got to the German frontier in the West, barely 10% of German industry was working, and that was well before the Red Army had got it across the German border. So the RAF mostly must have done something right over the previous 5 years.
Right. I remember watching The World at War fairly recently, maybe a year or two ago. And there was, I seem to remember there was a section on the bombing campaigns, and it was kind of painted as basically like a shot in the dark, like they were just dropping bombs aimlessly, and most of them never hit a target. And it was kind of, I seem to remember it being painted as like quite a fruitless campaign in that documentary.
I mean, you're right, Phil. And what astonished me was that when I did go to Germany, to the Freiburg archives and other places, it was quite clear that even in 1940, when every history says that every raids were puny, missing targets, etc., the Germans were apoplectic at the effect the RAF was having, and that was just with twin-engine bombers and small bombs, and they knew that the four-engine bombers were on the way. So it was an entirely different narrative if you asked the Germans what it was really like.
Wow. And how would you compare the RAF's bombing campaign with the bombing that happened in Britain? With Coventry. Coventry was a famous city, I think, wasn't it, that got bombed?
Yes. I mean, the worst city to be bombed was Hull, and then the Liverpool docks, the east of London, Birmingham, central Birmingham, Glasgow, of course, and we know Coventry as well. Southampton, Plymouth was hit many times. The port there. These were very effective raids, and I'm not sure how long we could have gone on for much longer, with that level of effective night bombing.
Presumably,
yeah.
Sorry, Marcus. I was just going to say, presumably the bombing campaign in Britain had effect on British industry and shipbuilding and stuff. So it makes me wonder how they managed to spin that dichotomy that it wouldn't work in Britain. It would work in Britain, but not in Germany.
Well, you're quite right. Yeah, it really is a dichotomy. And how I think something like 60% of the houses in Hull, the port of Liverpool, Belfast, etc. I think 200 Sterling bombers were not produced because of the raid on the Short brothers, and of course the Supermarine Spitfire factory in Southampton was wiped out, and we had a crash program of dispersing the factories to places like Salisbury and else, green field sites, etc. So it really was the Germans with their aircraft, lots of them, especially the night bombing, was extremely effective.
Wow, cool. Sorry, go on, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, I remember watching a similar thing, and there's a lot made of, if I'm remembering correctly, like the Americans would bomb during the daytime, and that was felt to be much more accurate and effective. And the RAF primarily, or I think they did wholly do night raids into Germany. And I'm just wondering, about, well, after your research then, what is the truth, if there's any difference between how effective the Americans were versus the British hitting their targets, whether it was night or day kind of thing?
Well, really, the performance of the American Air Force is a very big subject alongside that of the RAF. In my opinion, the American Air Force was infinitely less effective than the British. And the reason was they came in with a wrong bomber, with a wrong bomb site, small bombs, no radar navigation equipment, very poor tactics, terrible navigation, and sometimes a 3% accuracy. And really, 1943, the first year they were set up and running in Britain, it was really an entirely wasted year in Europe. On the other hand, they did do very well in the Mediterranean and in Ploestri, knocking out the Romanian oil fields to some extent, and in Italy, of course. But in Northern Europe, they were a complete failure, really, until an amazing guy called General James Doolittle came in, and he completely sorted them out, and he did make the 8th Air Force the mighty 8th by the end of the war. And so that the combination of the Americans by day and the British by night really was a double hammer blow in the last 6 or 7 months of the war. But unfortunately, the Americans were really poor until quite late in the war. I mean, I have to say, and I'm saying that with great regret, because they came to save our country from the Germans, and those crews suffered very badly because of it.
What's the sort of timeline regarding bombing? Did Britain start bombing Germany right from the get-go in 1939 through to the end, or was it sporadic, or how did it work?
Well, I think something like 60% of the bombs were dropped in the last year of the war.
Wow.
That was a very high percentage of it was really in the last 12 months when we really got going with very large air fleets and etc. And when we had destroyed the last of the Luftwaffe, of course, in the last year. But Britain, Britain was very active. Our raids on Berlin didn't cause much damage, but they caused a great deal of fury amongst the German hierarchy, especially Hitler, who ordered some very large air raid shelters across Germany, and also the very large flak towers in three or four German cities. And the amount of steel which went into those flak towers could have created something like 100 U-boats if they hadn't been diverted. And Germany really needed U-boats, at a critical moment in 41, 42, Germany was short of U-boats. So that was much of what the RAF did was to divert a huge amount of resource strength from Germany, from war-making activities. But you're right, the British, 95% of the bombs that were tossed between Britain and Germany and Germany and Britain, 95% went from Britain to Germany. Only 5% were dropped on Britain.
I didn't realize it was that big a ratio.
That one-sided.
Yeah.
Gosh,
I find that's incredible, isn't it?
The flak. Sorry.
Extraordinarily, every raid from about mid 43 onwards, when the so-called First Battle of the Ruhr, when the large numbers of Lancaster bombers came available, and we began hitting the big industrial cities of the Ruhr, which is the central industrial center of Germany. 3 million people every night had to leave their homes, go into shelters, go into fields, abandon factories, God knows what else. It was the first real war in which really large numbers of people were involved. That was the scale of the damage. And probably German productivity was at least halved by the sheer nuisance value, beyond just physical damage, cumulatively going along with it later on.
So the first few years of the war, the air war, was that primarily around knocking out fighters? So, thinking Battle of Britain, was that 41 and
to clear the way for bombers?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, was that designed to lay the path for a clearer flight for bombers? Although we know we had the flak towers and things, but if you had a lot of Messerschmitts flying around, these are big, slow, heavy aircraft. They're probably quite vulnerable to having a lot of zippy fighters shooting at them. Yes,
well, throughout the war, the Luftwaffe night fighter was an extremely effective killer of British aircraft, tragically, as was flak, and also things like weather. It's worth remembering that the first three winters of the war, 39, 40, 41, were probably the three worst winters of the 20th century. At one point, you could walk between Denmark and Sweden because so much of the Baltic and the Kattegat, were iced up. I think much of Britain had 3 months of continuous frost. Aircraft used to freeze up and fall out of the sky. Engines stopped, wings froze up. They couldn't see out of the cockpits because there was an inch of ice on the outside. Yeah, people froze to death at 20,000 feet. In fact, the biggest casualty cause for the American Air Force in the first 18 months of the war was frostbite. It wasn't losses through aircraft crashes or anything like that. Wow. But to answer your question, industrial targets were the number one U-boat bases, Kiel, Hamburg, the big rail marshalling yards, Krupps, the big manufacturer in Essen, Duisburg, Dusseldorf. These were the big targets for the first 3 or 4 years of the war.
Were there any targets in France as well while it was occupied? Did Britain bomb factories in France that maybe had been taken over by the Germans, or is that nothing?
Well, our initial attacks in France were on the U-boat bases on the west coast, Brest, Saint-Nazaire, Bordeaux. Those were a total failure. We managed to erase those French cities. Luckily, they'd been largely evacuated. But we absolutely failed in really harming a single U-boat, which is one thing Air Marshal Harris got right. Yes, in the six months prior to D-Day, we did wipe out the French railway network, and that did cause about 30 to 40,000 deaths, which was tragic, but almost unavoidable, even with pinpoint targeting on their marshalling yards, rail depots, tunnels, bridges, that sort of thing. But I have to point out that only half of all Bomber Command operations were pointed at German cities. The rest were everything from a very, very effective sea mining program, which started from the first day to the last day of the war, by the way, which crippled the German coastal fleet, crippled our U-boat training, and may have cost about 90 U-boats, whose fate we don't know. Where it was also very important in the lead up to D-Day, for example, and things like supporting operations like the SOE, dropping agents into the line, etc. But of course, we had a major campaign against Italy, northern Italy, which led very directly to Italy's surrender in 1943, because Italian cities had no air defenses whatsoever, and there was a big national strike, and Mussolini was arrested, and of course the Germans did invade, but Italy was definitely knocked out of the war by RAF bombing.
How are the bombing campaigns portrayed in German and British propaganda during the war?
Well, the Germans focused on bodies of children, schools, hospitals, that sort of thing. They never really showed damage being done to U-boat, shipyards, trains, and etc. It was Goebbels, as you know, was a master at the art of propaganda. So he made out that the British were terror flyers, that we were killers of babies, and that was maintained throughout the whole of the war. And he did encourage also at the end of the war that if British aircrew and American aircrew were captured, they should be lynched by the public, by the German public, which we know many were at the end of the war.
Wow, that's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite a common thing that comes up, I suppose, is the difference in how prisoners of war were treated on both sides. So does that form part of your book as well, in terms of, I suppose, well, I've heard stories of German forces being kept in camps in rural parts of England and stuff, and then ended up staying essentially after the war and forming relationships and things like that. And I wonder if that was even possible if you crash landed or parachuted out and landed somewhere in Germany, what your chances were and what would happen to you essentially.
I think it all depended on who the people were who caught you.
Yeah.
And if you were caught by the Gestapo and the security police, the Heerhinstadt, your fate was probably not going to be a good one. But if you managed to be taken by the local police into Luftwaffe custody, you were then probably safe. Right. And I have to mention an incident in which a famous Luftwaffe ace went to Buchenwald concentration camp, and he personally got 150 American and British aircrew out of Buchenwald and into Luftwaffe custody, where they were then safe and fed thereafter.
That's a story that I've not heard.
No, tell us a bit more about that. What was his? Did he keep diaries or anything? Do we know his motivation? Or
yes, well, he realised that many aircrew were being killed, and he knew. They knew that the British and Americans would treat their prisoners properly, and if any, because they knew from the First World War that is what had happened, and the letters were sent back from Britain and Italy and even Australia, where POWs were being held, and America, of course, in Kansas and other places. So they knew their prisoners were alive and being fed, and he wanted to reciprocate. The Luftwaffe was generally, a better class of, morality than the rest of the German armed forces by a long shot.
Wow, right, interesting. Presumably, one of the motivations for bombing would be to target commercial interests, as well as just maybe ones that are purely integrated into the war effort. Would that be true?
Well, Germany had these had since the 1880s very large combines. They call them Krupp, and Merck and Darmstadt, and many other very very large companies, which of course had given money to Hitler in the early days of the war, and then received enormous weapons contracts, which had enriched many of the biggest names in German industry. So it was really the British tried to focus on the top 50 German cities where the greatest number of war-making equipment, and as I say, especially the small part and component factories were located, because the greatest Achilles heel of German industry wasn't the big assembly plants, it was the thousands, tens of thousands of small companies making one or two vital bits for an aircraft or a U-boat, or a tank.
Right, and presumably these smaller factories may have been softer targets. They may have been well less defended than the massive factories where planes are being bolted together, ready and assembled, or tanks or whatever.
Yes, and of course there are many more of them. And of course, even if they weren't hit, if you deprived them of electricity and water and a gas supply, which hundreds were in every raid, it may have taken a few weeks to get them back together. But the regional, the district dislocation was as great as the physical damage. And so, of course, the Germans entered what they call the Zulieferungskrise, the spare parts crisis, where they absolutely, if there was a tank or an aircraft that did 10 days, 2 weeks worth of frontline service, suddenly it was out of action because they were missing a few vital bits, which they suddenly couldn't find. They couldn't source. And even when they did disperse a lot of that production into huts and fields all over Germany, transporting all those bits back to the assembly plants and then back to the airfields was a nightmare of logistics, which they never solved.
You mentioned earlier that you were talking to people in Germany, which seemed to pique your interest, that maybe there was more to this story than what the sort of traditional historical narrative has laid out. What was your sort of next step? How did you go about finding evidence to support what I guess was your hypothesis at the time, that this whole story needed to be revisited?
Well, I started by looking at the effects in Germany, is what the Germans said.
Yeah.
The loss of production, the dislocation, the huge diversion, not only of their heavy weapons, but also 2 million people were diverted from factories and to some extent the front lines just to clear up the mess and get the railways going again. So the diversion of resources, and not to mention the building the Atlantic Wall and the biggest construction program, probably maybe in history, which they had to put into action. Do you know that Guernsey, 13% of all of the resources of the Atlantic Wall went in only to the island of Guernsey, which, as you've ever been, there's 1,000 emplacements, concrete emplacements on that island, which the Germans built, in the belief that the first bit of Europe Britain would try and retake was the Channel Islands, which was of course tactically ridiculous, but so going from German sources and from the German speakers was very important. And I should also say that people don't realize that German cities were the centers of the greatest evil. They were not these pretty areas of architecture, beauty, Beethoven music and all the rest of it. There were dozens of guillotine prisons with guillotines, tens of thousands of dissidents, 200,000, I think, in total, who've been imprisoned, and any number of people, men signed up to be murder squads in the east of Europe. Yeah. 500 or 600 went from one district of Hamburg. These were, not to mention the deportation of the Jews and their eradication. So we're talking about places which were utterly ghastly. Not to mention finally, the huge number of up to 12 million foreign laborers, many of whom died of disease and overwork and starvation. And there were 42,000 labor camps across Germany, including many in the centrist German cities, all of which, were they saw them going to work every day through the streets. So these German cities were really nasty places.
For people who are interested, you mentioned people from Hamburg signing up for the murder squads. There's I would say a great book, but a harrowing book called Ordinary Men, which I read a couple of years ago by Christopher Browning, who focuses in on one particular, I don't want to call them a battalion or a squadron of people who were involved in the final solution, and he brings receipts with how things went down. But I think maybe we should save sort of some of the moral arguments for a bit later. Another issue, I suppose, is the story that's been told since the war. So, you've been talking about going to German archives and speaking to German people. There must be a reason why this information has been suppressed in the decades following the Second World War, right?
Yes, Britain has this ghastly history of turning on its soldiers and sailors, the moment a war is over. After the Armada, British seamen were left to starve at Dover. After the Battle of Waterloo, the survivors, and there were a lot of wounded, were just left, they were largely abandoned, often on tiny pensions, if at all. And after the Second World War, the RAF was pretty much abandoned and also severely criticized by a group of moralizing individuals who had no idea of the difficulties involved in staging an air war or of the effectiveness of what had they done. And this is classic. For Polish and French people, this is astonishing behavior which they cannot understand. But it's something peculiar to Britain in our own way, and I personally don't quite understand it. But it's a nasty trait amongst many of us, I'm afraid.
What were the criticisms from this regard on sort of moral grounds while the bombing campaigns were happening, or was it completely retrospective once the war had finished?
There was a very small number of people during the war, including a couple of MPs, I think the Bishop of Chichester amongst them, who said that it was immoral to kill civilians, which was their view. And at a time when German morality was nil, and millions of people were being murdered across Eastern Europe. So, but the real torrent happened after the war, when an awful lot of what I call faux academics, philosophers, armchair types all began grouping together, and it became a kind of a self-perpetuating clique, which continued with when several authors who I'd prefer not to mention ran with it and produced best-selling books, which were frankly, ridiculous, ridiculous volumes of history, anti-history, really.
In my mind, the things that I think about in terms of evidence in that are the famous story of Dresden, and what happened there. And was there another fire bombing? Was it Hamburg? Am I remembering that correctly? Where there was a big fire or somewhere, and how much those two particular stories play into the whole narrative, or colour the narrative. Well, look at these two things that happened, I think, towards the end of the war, and that means effectively the rest of it was amoral or immoral to engage in.
Well, first one has to say that the German civilian casualties from the bombing was about 370,000 in total, and they were. It sounds an odd thing to say, but that was relatively low compared to the amount of bombing that took place. And that was because they did have very effective air raid shelters and evacuation procedures. The Allies, the bombing, we managed to create a firestorm on only about 5 or 6 occasions over the 300,000 odd raids we did in fact mount during the war. So what I call the success rate was minimal, microscopic really, if a firestorm was what was created. The RAF did drop millions of incendiaries in the same way that the Germans did on Britain, because it was the most effective way of destroying a city. They dropped these large 4,000-pound bombs and then the incendiaries. So the 4,000-pound bombs opened up the buildings, and the incendiaries then set the whole lot alight. We had a bit of luck, if you want to call it that, with Hamburg, in that we had a very new thing called Windows, which meant that it completely disturbed the German radar, so they really couldn't intercept our bombers initially. And also we set fire to the largest timber storage yard in Europe, which then, of course, set fire to the rest of the city. And the fire brigade ran. They didn't stop and help. So Hamburg was demolished quite quickly and effectively, and the city never recovered. But it was probably a bigger turning point in the war than Stalingrad in many ways, because the Germans suddenly realized that every one of their cities were going to suffer a similar fate, and that they could not stop it. They could not win the war, like it or not. And although production in a few of the shipyards and other places did recover after about 6 weeks, they never recovered their full capacity. If you like, I have a whole chapter on Dresden, which, to my astonishment, almost everything one's ever heard about the Dresden raid is wrong. But we can talk about that now or later as you wish.
Yeah, let's focus in on that, because like Matt, I'm the same. It's maybe it's part of our education system, but Dresden is always or maybe it's from popular culture and from TV and things. Dresden is always brought up as the example of how devastating the bombing campaign was. So yeah, maybe we should focus in on that, and you tell us what's wrong about the story.
Well, first and foremost, the death toll probably didn't enter the top 30 German city death tolls. It was a non-event in terms of civilian deaths, which, the 200,000 deaths which Goebbels stated, and which was widely accepted, why I don't know, even by the RAF, and never properly questioned, let alone criticized. And even today, even on Netflix, on Getty Images, the BBC, that figure is still trotted out. It was in the Telegraph archives until about 10 years ago. So I went there in 1991, and I met several businessmen who were not Nazis, who had factories on the outskirts of the cities, and they told me exactly what the true story was. First and foremost, there were very few refugees in the city. That was because the Red Army was only 60 kilometers away, and the few refugee trains that arrived in the city, nobody got off. They wanted to stay on the trains, which were then powering west and south to get away from the Soviets. Also, there was no food in the city. Secondly, something like 12,500 slave laborers in the city escaped in the chaos after the raid, and they survived, which many slave laborers did not. And it's likely that around 10,500 German civilians, mostly in the center of Dresden, died. So the number of slave laborers who managed to survive they exceeded the number of German civilians who were killed. So it was possibly a uniquely beneficial raid, if you're going to call it in human mortality terms. Next, of course, Dresden was a vital city. It had not been bombed. It was the biggest inland canal network center in eastern Germany. It was very important for logistics. Also, it had 140 primary factors, some of the last factories really working at full pelt. And the two critical ones were the were the Icon Zeiss plants, making gun sights and range finders, binoculars, and the optical sights for U-boats and God knows what else. And the destruction of those factories and their labor force was critical in finally cutting off Germany's war fighting capacity. One should also say that like all German cities, Dresden was the divisional headquarters for at least 2, probably 3 big German Wehrmacht divisions, and that the Altstadt, you can go there today and see it. It's a bigger military headquarters that was completely destroyed in the raid, very usefully for the Allies. Finally, if you want to compare Dresden's 10,500 deaths with the 80,000 who died in the 3-month siege of Breslau, which I think is 150 kilometers, a bit more to the east. It was surrounded by the Red Army for 3 months, and it was flattened with Soviet artillery, and many, many more civilians died in that siege than died in Dresden. So for all of that and all those reasons, any book you'll read on Dresden is, in my view, completely and humiliatingly wrong.
So let's hone in on the sources. The books that you mentioned that are getting things wrong, which sources are they using, and which sources have you used to find the counter argument?
Well, my sources have all come from the Germans, and
right.
There's a guy called Berglander who was actually in the city on the day and has written the true account. And also I spoke to town officials as well during my visits there.
Right. So right. Okay.
So I spoke to the real people who were on the ground. Also, there is a large number of people in Dresden and around the Dresden raid who make these ridiculous claims of very large numbers of people who died. And there is no evidence of that. But we do know that I think about 6,500 were incinerated in the city centre. And if you add, say, 2,000 or 3,000 whose bodies were not recovered, which is quite common, of course, you start coming to the real total. The raid was also very concentrated. It was very concentrated in the city centre. It was not spread out. So the suburbs were largely undamaged.
Really? That's interesting, because again, what I've taken from cultural osmosis about the Dresden campaign is that the city was just completely flattened and demolished, and basically everyone was killed and nothing remained afterwards.
Well, another fascinating idea is that people think that Air Marshal Harris ordered the raid, and that he also promoted it. In fact, the man who ordered the raid was Deputy Prime Minister Clement Attlee. And the reason for that was because Churchill and the #1 RAF guy called Portal were on their way to the Yalta conference. So sitting behind, in the cabinet committee, albeit with a list of targets already agreed, was Clement Attlee, the one man who deprived Harris of his peerage after the war, and he also turned down a medal for the RAF as well. So he also disastrously gave 40 Rolls-Royce jet engines to Stalin, so that during the Korean War, the Americans suddenly met jet-equipped Soviet fighters, something no one ever thought was possible.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's a story I've never heard. Yeah, that he shared the jet engine. Yeah,
you kind of you're sort of angling towards a political angle there with Churchill, Attlee, and maybe some political machinations influencing people's decisions. Is that what you're going at? What we're going?
Well, unfortunately, he was obviously a Labour figure and an important figure too. And by the way, during the House of Commons, Attlee also at one point turned around and said he agreed with Churchill that all of the Nuremberg the top Nazis should be shot and not tried. That's in the House. That's in Hansard, if anyone wants to read it. So he was by no means a softie, and of course he'd fought very bravely in the First World War. But what I'm trying to say is, and I'm not trying to be political, definitely not, was that he was the MP, one of the main MPs who was against the bombing campaign in the House of Commons during the war, was a Tory, but there were also Labour MPs who agreed with him. So I'm definitely not trying to make a political point here. Only a personal point against, or a clarification against Attlee.
Right. Okay. But you kind of insinuated there was maybe some personal issues between Arthur Harris and Clement Attlee.
Yes. Really, Attlee detested Harris, particularly because he was very straight. He didn't apologize for anything. He didn't put himself forward. He only had, I think, one press interview, film interview in the entire war. He never apologized, so he stood by his principles throughout, rightly or wrongly. Yeah.
Interesting.
On the subject of Harris, I'll say the following: when we finally realize that above all the Allied commanders, it was he who inflicted more fundamental damage on Germany, including the Russians, than anybody else, we will erect a column the size of Nelson's in Trafalgar Square in his honor. And I'm not joking. He is a pivotal figure in the war, and no one seems to recognize that.
There's a Bomber Command memorial, isn't there, in London?
There's a wonderful memorial in the Green Park, in the Hyde Park corner, of Green Park. I go there often because I'm often doing filming there. It's a magnificent. I went in 2012 to its opening and met many of the people there, and of course, everyone turned out for it. Tragically, when the RAF had been asking for it for many years, and is it one of the Bee Gees? I've forgotten his name, his Christian name. He was a major figure in funding it, along with some others as well. He went to the RAF airfields in the 1980s. He said he felt, in the grassland that now took over these airfields in Lincolnshire, he felt the ghost and the spirit of the RAF crews there. And that's what led him to start the campaign to create a memorial for them.
I didn't realise it was privately funded. Did the government put anything to it, or is there still sort of I'm guessing there is still
not a penny. The
it.
Government did not put one penny in.
Bastards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, still no. It's still, by the sounds of it, then something that politically maybe you don't want to be associated with.
War.
Yeah. Well, not so much. Well, I think politically people are willing to be involved in remembrance days, aren't they, and things like that, and D-Day memorials and things. Yes. But this particular part of the war, or how it's viewed, is still seen as something you don't want to be associated with.
Still, it's morally ambiguous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Well, yeah, I think that's a tragedy. I really do. And the criticism put on the individual aircrew after the war, when many of them just stopped talking about what they'd done during the war because they knew that their younger colleagues would criticize them and call them baby killers or whatever else they did. But when the Queen Mother unveiled the statue to Arthur Harris, in St. Clement's Dane, church there, John Major and not a single cabinet minister turned up for the unveiling, and when the eminent historian Sir Martin Gilbert wrote to all MPs to try and get them to agree to an RAF aircrew medal, very few MPs agreed or even replied to his letter. So it's something which for many people is an embarrassment. And I think it's a crucial mistake in our history. And I hope it eventually we reverse it.
Do you think it's because bombing is perhaps seen as indiscriminate? Essentially just dropping huge amounts of explosive in a wide area that could contain anyone. Whereas on the field of infantry battle, it's bayonet, soldier against soldier. Perhaps not that, but less
Yeah.
indiscriminate, I guess. Is it as black and white as that? It's just people see it's just chucking fire from the sky and not really knowing or caring to an extent where it hits.
There's certainly an element of that, especially the ongoing idea that the Americans did precision bombing and we did area bombing. And after the war, so many of the silly Germans who were interviewed said that British bombing was ineffective and American bombing was highly effective. And this was obviously completely untrue. In fact, the reverse is almost certainly the case. What I would say is that this country prefers to remember things like the Battle of Britain, Dunkirk, the Siege of Malta. That is the sort of D-Day. What I call the sanitized victories, or the triumphant defeats. The home campaign, etc., etc. The fact that Britain outproduced the Russians and the Germans, and in many ways the Americans as well, in our industry, in ways that no one can really recall. Our production was fantastic, a huge achievement, by the way. Interestingly, the Battle of Britain and the whole story is really about southern England, but much of the history of the Bomber Command, which of course was 10, 20 times the size of Fighter Command, is all about the north of England, Yorkshire, the Lancaster factory in Manchester, and all of that. There's very much a northern story, which people tend to forget.
Is there a bias there? Is there a north-south bias there in the historians or whatever people writing after us want to focus on the south of England and to the disregard of us northerners?
Yeah, the more cultured south.
Well, now you ask, I think, yeah, it is. Yeah. I struggle to think of any author who, from the north of England who's really tackled Bomber Command. There are amazing groups around RAF airfields they've preserved RAF museums, aviation squadron memorial associations, etc. in Lincolnshire, east of England, even in Scotland. But very few authors, as far as I know. Yes, that's a very good point.
I think we should allow you to, because I think a lot of people listening, and myself included, to a degree, I have a problem with civilians being bombed. I'm sure a lot of people listening will. So, what are the arguments for targeting cities and killing factory workers and people who some would call innocent? Some would say, well, they're participating in the German war efforts, or they're a target. But I mean, what are your key sort of arguments for it?
Well, first and foremost, the Germans could leave a city if they wanted to. Something slave laborers, Jews, many others could not do. And the obvious answer, of course, is that within a German urban area, all of the important bits are all there. Everything from the water system, gas works, electricity, libraries, police stations, prisons, government headquarters, divisionary headquarters, railway stations. It's all there in the city centre. That's why you dislocate it with bombs. So I suppose the most important thing is that because we bombed cities, we forced Germany to create a gigantic nationwide air defense system, which consumed vast amounts of their resources, which would otherwise have been pointed at us at the front lines. Here's one statistic. Something like 9,500 of the vital 88mm guns, which were incredibly effective on long range, which could have been used as anti-tank guns, were taken away from all the front lines and pointed skyward at us and the Americans. On the battle in Normandy, I think there were less than 100 88mm guns, which saved tens of thousands of Allied tanks potentially, And on the disaster at Omaha Beach on D-Day, there were only 2 88mm guns. What if there had been 20? We would not have got ashore. What if there had been 20 or 30 at all the other beaches? We would not have got ashore. And the last thing, of course, is ammunition. The diversion and consumption of ammunition by the Air Force was fantastic. If you can think that something like 1/3 to 40% of all ammunition was diverted from the front lines to fire at our bombers, that was an enormous crippling effect on the German frontline forces. It took between 5 and 20 approximately shells to knock out the average British, American, Russian tank. It took between 2,000 and 5,000 shells to damage a single Allied bomber. Wow. So the wastage and consumption of ammunition was fantastic. And of course, something like 15 to 20% of all German trains spent their entire time taking and transporting ammunition from production sites to German cities where they were stored for the next raid. So these are the kind of incredible damaging effects, indirect effects, that we must never forget.
And if the bombing raids weren't effective, then, you know, why would you bother doing that, pointing those guns at the skies and using all that ammo? It must have been such devastation on the ground that you, as a German strategist, would say, look, we can't have any more of this horrendous area bombing. There's too much damage. We need all these guns, and we need to fire all these thousands of shells up at these planes. Just to knock one out would prevent a huge amount of damage to the German infrastructure.
Yes, I mean that's the logical corollary from that. But the Germans were very, very scared of propaganda, and they were very scared of German civilians turning against them. And there was a huge backlash after the raid on Hamburg in mid-43 with the firestorm, when the Germans feared that the support for the regime was teetering on collapse, as was their morale, and because they had such ferocious security forces. I think there were 35,000 secret policemen in Berlin alone, and in the entire British Empire, I think we had less than 400. So, yeah. India was ruled, as was the whole of the British Empire, 99% by consent, for 200 years. The Germans, they didn't have the consent of their civilians, and they were very scared of losing, of any, dissent of any kind. There was an actor in Berlin who was a Morecambe Wise figure, and he made a joke in a bar in Berlin about Hitler. It was overheard. He was taken, he was tried, and he was beheaded in a Berlin prison. And that news was circulated throughout Germany as a warning. No one was safe.
Wow.
So that's the sort of place Germany was.
Now, one of the arguments I've heard put forward for the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is that it ended the firebombing of Tokyo, and that there was far more lives lost in Japan through the firebombing beforehand than was that it brought an end to the war. Yeah. Sooner, and like a final quick stroke kind of thing. Is there an argument for the bombing of Germany along a similar line?
Well, of course, let's not forget. Everyone intended in America, in Los Alamos, that the first target city would be Germany. Everyone assumed for 4 years that the one German city was going to be the demonstrator, and not Japan. And so but the collapse of Germany led to it being Lancaster bombers were offered as an alternative to the B-29 bomber because it was better. And with radar navigation, of course, it was a much better bomber to perform the task. And of course, as you know, Hiroshima was chosen because the first target city, which I forget, was shrouded in cloud, and the B-29 couldn't zero in on the target point. Which of course a Lancaster would have done. But interestingly, yes, the fire raids within centuries on German cities, Japanese cities, before the atomic bombs were ready, were fearful because, of course, Japanese cities were all made of wood.
Right.
One thing I would say in favor of the atomic bomb, which on Japan, which no one ever mentions, is the fact that in China, hundreds of thousands were starving to death under the most brutal conditions from the Japanese occupation forces. I think 95% of Japanese troops were not on the Pacific Islands; they're in Japan, happily bayoneting tens of thousands of Chinese civilians. And so the end of the war led to the survival of literally millions of Chinese people. And that's something which no one seems to recognize, least of all the Chinese today.
And also is it U-47, Unit 47 or something, where they were doing experiments on Chinese PLWs and horrific vivisection, all sorts of horrific experiments on people.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, there were 300, comfort women from Korea who were suffering terrible conditions, as we know, all over the South Pacific, who had been brought in as we know what, for Japanese troops. The unbelievable things were going on, and in the number of civilians murdered, by the bayonet and the rifle and the club in Manila far outweighed the number of 120,000, I think, killed in Manila. And of course, 250, 300,000 died in Warsaw. So 1.2 million in Leningrad. Far the Allies. The tragedy was, the greatest thing. The one thing about World War II is the greatest number of people killed were all civilians, all killed by the Axis countries. Something which didn't happen in World War I, by the way.
Yeah, I guess because we didn't have the hardware back then.
That's right. Yeah, and by the way, in most cases the rival armies did take prisoners and did treat civilians well. Not in all cases by any means, but far better than the targeted killings of the Second War.
Warfare seems to have changed so much, because if you go back to the 14th, 15th century, you'd have battlefields and you'd have your armies on the battlefield, and if you were a civilian in the villages or whatever, you could probably sit on a hill and watch, and that was it, and it was decided there and then. And the leaders were at the front leading the armies into battle. Whereas now it's the other way around, and civilians are getting killed, and all the leaders are in bunkers or in command centers just operating computers and staying away from the danger.
I think the Americans have an amazing statistic that for them, the Second World War was the first, and probably the British as well, maybe, and I'm not sure, but was the first war in which more people died from combat than actually died of disease. Because in all previous wars, and certainly in the American Civil War, the vast number of people died of disease rather than in combat. You'd get 4,000 dying at the Battle of Antietam, but 30,000 would die of disease, typhus, dysentery, malaria, etc., TB.
Yeah, same in World War I with the trench foot, all the illness in the trenches, malnutrition, rats, everything else.
Yeah, and the Spanish flu, of course, which wiped out millions. Yeah, I had the pleasure. I mean, as you may know, James Stewart, the actor, famous actor, you may know. I had the pleasure of meeting him in rather odd circumstances. My father was a doctor in Harley Street. And one day I was at my little flat and he said, come to the house straight away. So I went round and I helped carry the enormous ECG machine, which weighed a ton in those days, in the back of his Rover. And we drove, I didn't know what on earth was going on. We went round to the Dorchester Hotel and up the 11th floor, and door opened and there was James Stewart lying in bed. And you may know he was a squadron leader on B-24 Liberator bombers in the European War. And he survived when many of his compatriots did not. Anyway, I did the ECG and my father examined him, blah, blah. And he discovered that my father had been 4 weeks on a US bomber station helping their casualties when they returned. So of course they've been chatting about, do you know such and such, which airfield do you go to? And suddenly the door swung open and this woman walked in her wedding dress, and it was his daughter. And she said, "Daddy, get out of bed. If you don't, come, we're going to miss the wedding." So wow. We were promptly thrown out, and that was the end of my story. So.
Yeah,
wild.
That's a great anecdote.
That's good.
Yeah.
But with regard to Dresden, I would like to say one thing. Many GCSE kids have been taught one book. Kurt Vonnegut's Catch-22, all about bombing, and I have no objection to that. But one of my father's patients was a chap called Unsdorfer, a Jew who survived both Auschwitz and Buchenwald. Unbelievably, he was his patient in London, and I met him every Christmas. We got a gigantic boxes of fruit, because he was a fruit merchant in the East End. But he wrote a book called The Yellow Star, and I'd like to see kids today reading a book like The Yellow Star, or Primo Levi's book on his experiences in concentration camps, alongside Kurt Vonnegut's book. I think we then get a better view, a more equal and fairer view of what Germany was really like.
Yeah, Ben, you made a good point about the shift from, what would you say, more chivalrous times, if pitched battles, and as far as I understand, it was Napoleon who changed the game, who sort of mobilized the entire country for war, and that's changed the picture ever since the early 1800s. And it's very easy for us in the security of 2026, where we're so insulated from warfare, to criticize people from 60 years ago who, from my understanding, were in an existential struggle, basically. And so it's difficult, although I do have sympathy for people who criticize the bombing campaigns. I think it's difficult to sort of criticize people making decisions in that time where, if things went another way, maybe life would be unrecognizable today.
Well, I have to say, the more and more I read about World War II, I have to say how incredibly impressed I am by how cleverly it was fought, how few people we lost throughout the world's biggest war, compared to certainly compared to the Germans. It was an incredibly well-run war for so many reasons. And perhaps one should also say that Bomber Command suffered the highest unit losses of any British formation during World War II. The only 10% of those who started in 1939 survived the war. Wow. And about a total of about I think 55,700 killed, a death rate of about 48 to 49% across the whole of the war. About half of all rear gunners were killed. Only about one or two people who actually got out of a plane who survived a downing of a bomber. One man went from flight sergeant to squadron leader in 7 weeks, because the losses on his squadron were so great. And if you look at the war diaries of some of the crews who went on the Dresden raid, well, the following night, after 9 hours over Dresden, they went to the town of Chemnitz, which is just down the road, and then 2 nights later to Leipzig, and many of them had got back on one engine or something, with the plane, parts of the plane missing, people dead. Arriving with just 20 gallons left in one engine. Just extraordinary feats of survival. It was a very dangerous profession right up to the last days of the war.
So people were literally going out every other day on raids.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Wow.
They had a phrase. Every time a squadron was received its bombs and its bombers and its crews, they were put on that night onto the the flight schedule, so you could easily fly that night straight away.
Wow.
If you and one of the tragedies was that we never were so many of the crews who lost who had done less than 5 sorties, 5 missions. So the novices suffered worst of all, and it was something we in the RAF never managed to solve. There was an idea of putting in two pilots, etc., to help, but that there were really not enough pilots to go around for that to be tested.
So there was no co-pilots originally?
No, there were co-pilots in American planes.
Right.
But there was only the pilot, and there were some remarkable instances where the pilot was disabled or killed, and the flight engineer or the wireless operator or the navigator brought it home and landed a 4-engine bomber, probably in bits, at night for the first time.
Wow, so people just had training for like a specific role in the plane then, and nothing else.
Yes, the Americans put enormous effort into their pilot training. The British put a gigantic effort into their navigator training. They were by far and away the most highly trained people, quite remarkably, sometimes 18 months to 2 years training to get these navigators right, to teach them all the, astro, whatever it is, dead reckoning, and use of the radio navigation systems, which were very complicated.
So what was the sort of age demographic of the people in the RAF bombers?
Sorry, what demographic?
Age demographic. What sort of ages were they? Were they older guys or?
I think the average was 22 for most of them. Guy Gibson was 23. He did 380 missions. I'm no relation, unfortunately, but he and people like Leonard Cheshire were remarkable people, remarkably skilled pilots, as were the Australians, of course, and the Canadians. I mustn't fail to mention the Canadians, who had very high losses.
Average age of 22. Is that driven by the precariousness of being in a bomber?
Well, many people in the British Army were 18, some of them 17. So it was really the RAF took the cream of the crop in terms of educational skills.
Right.
It wasn't easy to get into the RAF by any means. They had lots of tests to filter out other people. By the way, although many of the people were sort of considered, upper class in the RAF, the vast majority of them were what I would call from skilled working class grammar school families, by 80%, something like that. I think half of the people in my father's class at Marlborough, the public school, were killed in World War II. So that was, and even more in World War I in my grandfather's class, where he was. God. So we're lucky that we are the generation who didn't go to war.
Mm-hmm. Where were all the 30-year-old men and 38-year-old men and 40-year-old men?
Well, many of them were in industry, or they were in all the 90% of the RAF was of course ground crew, or skilled things like radio operators, loaders, fitters, industrial, the operations people, weather, reconnaissance operations. The RAF at the end of the war was by far and away the most sophisticated organization on earth, bar none. They could put 600 bombers over a German city within 20 minutes, along with all the subsidiary spoof raids to divert aircraft, the Luftwaffe aircraft, night fighters, away from the main raid. And by the end of the war, their total domination of what I call the radio, the radioscape, meant that they completely swamped the German night fighters and radar, so they could not track the RAF aircraft at all.
What was the ramp up to that efficiency rate, Marcus? I'm just thinking if we had to do that now, like tomorrow, I'm not sure it would go very well.
Well, funnily enough, the Americans, I believe, have lost 2 aircraft over Iran, and I think they did about 2,000 missions off the top of my head. I think the Ukraine and the Soviet air forces are mainly grounded because missiles are too effective against aircraft now. You can get a $10,000 missile that can take down a $20 million fighter these days. So it's overturned now. The radar warfare, which the RAF most definitely pioneered, is with us today in modern warfare.
Well, hopefully we won't have to.
Well, yeah. I mean, and interestingly, as you may have seen, the Sun newspaper is the world's best source of information on, amongst other things, the Ukraine war. Their reporters and their analysts there, a Scotsman, an intelligence officer, they do the world's best reviews of what's going on in the Ukrainian war. Something it's better than the MOD, or it's very good indeed. Wow. And you can see now with the Ukraine, the hilarious irony that the Iranians gave tens of thousands of deadly drones to the Russians to fire at the Ukrainians, and now it's the Ukrainians' anti-drone technology which they are selling and giving to the UAE and Saudi Arabia to stop them from being hit by Iranian drones.
Oh my God.
Wow.
The ironies of war.
Yeah.
But I suppose what has been most interesting for me has been the way in which so much of our history has to be examined much more carefully than what conventional history tells us. Yeah,
hence the revision. And I flicked up a little screenshot. It was something about, was it Arthur Harris being accused of war crimes or something like that retrospectively? I didn't read the story. I think it's from the Telegraph a few years ago.
Yes, there have been these ridiculous things suggesting that what they did, was a war crime, which I think is perfectly, well, what can one say? They were fighting the most evil regime and had to do it in the most efficient way. You have to remember that Air Marshal Harris was a fighter ace in World War I. And as was Portal, his senior, the head of the RAF, as were many of the other people. And the last thing they wanted to do was to fight the German army, which was an incredibly effective operation, head on, because that's when we really did lose 900,000 men in Passchendaele, Ypres, and the Somme. My grandfather was a frontline doctor throughout the 4 years of World War I, including the first day of the Somme, when we had 30,000 dead. Just so the RAF campaign was a way of strangling Germany without losing 900,000 people, men in a conventional war.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Marcus, we've blown over an hour already. And but I hear it's a massive tome that you've written, so I guess it's up to people if they want to dive into this subject. They need to pick the book up and go from there, really.
Thank you very much. It's taken me 2 years. It took me a year longer than I expected, but the more and more I dug into it, it just shows just how incredibly effective it was and how so many myths and ridiculous notions had taken hold, which were quite wrong, all of which I had not expected at all.
What's that old phrase? The first casualty of war is the truth.
Yes. Yeah. It was interesting. I went to Bosnia after the war, and so much of what you had to be very careful because the paramilitary groups were all around. You had to be careful you weren't taken and disappeared by them. Even 3 months after the war had ended. As a boy, I went around the Middle East quite a lot with my parents. They were still quite dangerous places even then, in Iraq and Basra, all those other places.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
Thank you.
No,
No, it's been good.
no, thank you, Marcus.
Yeah.
It's been interesting, hasn't it? And
Yeah.
like I said, people can rafbook.co.uk, is that the best place for people to go
Yes.
to?
Yeah, I have about 100 authors' copies, which are a bit cheaper than Amazon for UK readers. But if you're outside the UK, Amazon is still the best channel, etc.
Okay, cool.
But I've also been asked to give lots of talks at libraries and museums and places. So if people want to contact me via rafbook.co.uk, and so I'd be more than happy to come along and chat because it's a fascinating subject.
Cool. Yeah.
And there are still a few veterans, a handful of veterans still around.
Is there? From the
Yes.
bombers? Wow.
From the bombers, yes. I met one by chance at a garden party, would you believe? And his father, who was killed 6 weeks after he was born on a raid in 1945, and he'd flown the bomber, which people can go and see in the RAF Museum at Hendon. His father had flown that bomber on an individual plane on earlier raids.
Wow.
Quite fascinating. And my uncle who had been a navigator on mosquitoes, and only the very best navigators ever got their hands inside a mosquito. He'd been on the famous Amiens raids where they knocked down the wall and hundreds of the partisans and dissidents were released from certain execution.
That's precision.
Have you got another book in you? Are you going to write a book on a different topic maybe coming up?
Well, I have one very controversial book on global warming, which I've tried to get published for about 15 years.
All right, let me guess. It's all true. The world's going to end in the next 20 years unless we radically tear up our economy and bow to the green agenda. Correct?
Actually, it's the opposite.
Oh, never. Gosh.
I've actually interviewed most of the people involved in it, and the whole thing is not true. But that's a whole different. But the other book I've got going is all about Canada. Canada basically saved us in both world wars. They saved us in 1914 and in 1940, long before the Americans came to our assistance. Sorry, but that's a fascinating story. But in 1976, I was a lumberjack in northern Ontario. Don't ask me how I got there, but I did. Had I known how rough and tough and nasty it was, all the black flies, bears, moose, mosquitoes, I would have stayed at home, I can tell you. However, the owner of the lumber mill was a guy called Oliver Corpola, and he was a Lancaster bomber pilot, it so happened. He was shot down over Holland during the war. He stayed on. He didn't join one of the rat lines. He decided to stay on and help the local partisans people. And whenever the Germans encountered him, he spoke Cree because he was half native Canadian. And they thought he was a deaf mute, and he was never arrested.
Wow.
And so he was one of the many Royal Canadian Air Force pilots who was brilliant at his job.
Well, you might have to come back on another couple of times then to talk about those.
Definitely
topics.
global warming. I want to get you back on, Marcus. Tell us about global warming, if you'd be so kind at some time in the future.
Yeah, we can arrange that for later in the year.
Yeah. No, but it's been fab. Thanks for your time, Marcus. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, one quick thing about global warming.
Mm-hmm.
We all know what happened on 9/11. Well, the day after 9/11, when all American civil aircraft were grounded, the average temperature in America went up 1.5 degrees. And 3.5 days later, when the temperature, when 5,000 flights a day resumed, as they did every day, the temperature went down 1.5 degrees because, of course, the contrails were then up there, changing the average temperature of America.
Well, yeah.
There you go,
Yeah.
I mean,
plus whatever they were spraying as well. The old chemtrails.
Anyway, entrails and contrails. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you for your time.
No,
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Marcus. rafbook.co.uk. We shall, me, Matt and Ben will take a quick 10-minute break.
Yeah.
Keep the stream going.
Yep.
And follow up follow up on Marcus's book and check it out. But thanks for your time and see you
Thank you
again,
very much.
hopefully.
Yeah.
All right.
Cheers, Marcus.
Take care,
bye-bye.
Marcus.
Bye-bye.
It's all right. Whoa, fantastic.
The dwarf, the cripple, and the
Giant fucking lenses. Oh, yeah. Raise this bar. Whoa. Let's see how we're looking. We didn't need the PowerPoint in the end.
No.
We had a
You can-
PowerPoint and everything.
Is that behind a paywall?
I can, we'll just put that on the Patreon.
Patreon exclusive.
Yeah.
Sell his PowerPoint.
It was
Tell
a
him.
gift.
Okay, I think we're.
Are we back?
Oh, fuck me, man.
Are we back now?
As I was saying, I think
Are we back?
we're back.
the dwarf, the cripple, and the
Giant fucking lenses. Yeah, if you just joined us, that was our chat with Marcus Gibson, all about the World War II bombing campaign from Bob Harris. War.
Bob Harris.
Bob Harris.
Yeah.
Whispering Bob.
Whispering Bomb Harris.
It's
That's good.
amazing amount of knowledge you can just pull out about World War II, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, been very, engrossed in that subject.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for 2 years, hasn't he? He said he was researching his book before.
Yeah, and I presume from beforehand as well. He's had a long-standing interest in the subject. So,
And his family.
It's good when you get someone who's like balls deep in a topic and something that I know nothing about. And
Yeah.
it's a learning opportunity, isn't it?
It was good.
Yeah, it'd be good to have him back as well with his other things.
Yeah.
Definitely the global warming stuff. I mean, that's right up my
Back alley.
back alley.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll come back some point in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
I need to do make a list of like we have that Google Notes with all the guests on.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do a separate one of previous guests who need to come back.
Yeah.
Just to keep track, because there's loads who we haven't had back on for ages that are like Bajirkles, Mark Bajirkles, and
Right.
Terry Boardman.
We want Bordeaux back, do we?
Yeah, okay, some interference there.
I know, yeah.
It's just
Really?
maybe it's me.
No, yes, I can hear it as well.
I don't know. It is what it is, isn't it?
Because you say what it is.
Well, it is what it is.
Cool. It's bank holiday.
It also holds I'll call polluters accountable with the most ambitious environmental justice agenda ever.
Oh, sorry, I meant this one.
Is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is.
God, there's a bit of lag on that, isn't there?
Yeah, it's Bluetooth. It's the old Roadcaster 1. Bluetooth connection's terrible.
Yeah.
I will get the Roadcaster 2 fixed at some point before long.
It's,
Although I do quite fancy a Rode Videocaster.
What's this now? Is this a new one?
Yeah, they brought out a couple of new models.
Oh.
The Videocaster is a Rode Podcaster 2, Procaster 2. No, Procaster's my phone. A Rodecaster 2. But it also has video inputs, HDMI inputs. So you can have 4 cameras hooked up to it, and you can manually change scene, or you can sync microphones to specific cameras. So you start talking Ben, and Ben's cam comes on. Shit like that.
okay, cool.
Yeah, man.
How much
So-
is that one?
I don't know, about best part of $1,000, I think.
Let's start a
Easy.
fundraiser.
About 800.
GoFundMe.
Right.
And then we'd need another 3 cameras, so that'd be another 1,000.
Where are you getting your cameras from?
eBay. I've just picked one up there. Sony A6000.
Oh, another one, A6000, yeah.
Yeah, that with the dummy battery pack and the HDMI, it's 350 quid used.
That's all right. I've got an A6000. It's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They have a true HDMI throughput.
Yes.
So you can use them as a webcam.
Yep. Without any faffing.
Assuming you have an A10 mini.
Yeah, or
interface,
some other HDMI.
Some other dongle.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Your Rodecaster Pro has encountered an error.
And it's not recording now.
Yeah, it's only just started now. Is it memory almost full?
Oh, no.
Oh, fuck me.
See if it's a Rode Videocaster.
You wouldn't have any of this problem.
Okay, more work for me tomorrow to get the audio, rip the audio off the video and for the podcast.
Maybe it just needs a bit more ash on it.
Yeah.
More ash, please.
If that helps.
Maybe that's like a loose connector, needs a bit of ash on.
Yeah, a bit of carbon, cover the points.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's strange because it says there's 3 hours and 39 minutes left on the SD card. Do you know what I'm going to do? Something interfering again. I'm just going to ping out the memory card and put it back in again to see what happens.
You're going to blow the contacts.
File
Ooh.
systems errors have been detected on your SD card.
Yeah.
That's Mark's case for that. You should back up the files, then reformat this micro SD card.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, but the video's working. Oh, it's recording again now.
Yeah, no errors detected.
Oh, it says now we're at 5 hours and 22, so I think it's maybe deleted the chat with Marcus.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Rodecaster.
Cheers, Rode. So, yeah, 2 faulty Rodecasters we have now.
Yeah, fuck you and the horse you rode in on.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a heavy dusting of cigarette.
This
ash.
is the most concerning thing. There's a blob of unknown goo. That's
Cum.
It's been there for a while. It still looks wet.
It's overshot.
I seem to think that was from when Ryan was last in. And we were milking each other. Okay. Maybe that's it. It's probably rum or chocomel.
Right.
Probably.
Yeah.
Swabs. Get the
So
swabs
I've got a story to tell. I went and got my haircut on Friday.
I also got a haircut. My annual haircut.
Yes,
Annual?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
annual.
Annual.
You only get it done once a year.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's because I don't know.
Is it because it
Laziness.
goes like in the shape of a cube?
I grow it until the point where I think I can't. I mean, I can't handle the looking like a vagrant too much.
And now
longer.
you don't look like a
I did not say that, Matt.
God, my hair been mad long after a year.
Yeah.
Well, it was shoulder length, wasn't it? Before I did a ponytail a few times.
Right.
Maybe that's a look you should go for.
I had that look.
You got the look.
Tell us about your haircut, Phil.
Mm.
I can't tell the difference.
I had a bit of a wasted day on Friday because we've been having dishwasher issues. Well, our old dishwasher, which is 15 years old, went kaput.
I thought she was older than that.
It's been fixed about 3 times, and I've been nursing it for the last few years. And it got to the point where I was having to pull the thing out and tip it 45 degrees to drain the water out the bottom of it, like once a week.
Oh.
So that got too much. So, right, we're going to have to bite the bullet and get a new machine. We'll get the same one, basically, a B-Core, bog standard, cheap as chips one. And it turned up, was it a week ago, maybe? Or 2 weeks ago? And plumbed it in and fired it up, and it did its first wash and then died. Started doing this double bleeping and saying it was draining, constantly draining. Like, for fuck's sake. It was a draining experience for me.
I was going to say, yeah.
And so anyway, I said, look, it's not an issue on our end. The drain's fine.
After you replaced the drain pipe.
I tried. Yeah, so the old machine went into like a 2.5 meter extension drain that went into the sink, like through all the cupboards into the sink. And while we were having the new machine, I thought I'll get a shorter one and I'll take it a better route to be for, because I am high in mechanical sympathy. I wanted to sympathise with the pump, the drain pump. I'll take it a more circuitous. Would that be more circuitous or less circuitous route? Yeah. So I put this new drain. I got it from I ordered it from Screwfix. It was like 12 quid for a 1.5 meter extension. So I've taken a meter of length off the drain pipe. Can only benefit the machine. Didn't matter. Died. And my plan was to put a standpipe drain in at some point. Well, that was my plan, was to put a proper standpipe drain behind the machine to outside and to the outside drain. But there isn't the clearance behind this dishwasher for such a contraption, so I ended up putting a standpipe in the pan drawers to the left-hand side of the dishwasher. And
technical.
Made no fucking difference. Still, the machine's fucked. I said, the machine's fucked. You're going to have to get onto AO. She gets onto AO. Oh, no, B core. You need to get onto B core. Right, so she gets onto B core. We'll send an engineer on Friday. This is like last weekend. So, gets the text. Obviously, she has a proper job. So she can't just like bin a day's work off to wait for a washing machine guy. So I have to sit at home earning nothing, basically. I got dot today's pay. And they say we'll be there between 7 and 12 Friday morning. Right, sound. Might be able to earn a few quid in the afternoon then. And then I get a text that on the day of saying between 8 and 11. And here's a link. You click on this link and it shows you your appointment number, and has a little graphic like Amazon does with that we're 2 stops away kind of thing. And it says like our engineer is at stop 1, you're stop 4. We're 3 stops away. Super. Well, I'm not going to go anywhere because if I miss him I will be crucified. Because she doesn't like washing up, obviously. Who does? 5 to 12 I get a text. I'm 2 hours behind. It's not great. Anyway, he turns up at 2:30. So he fucks about with it, tips it, drains it, takes some bits out of it. Yeah, it's fucked. It's fucked, mate. You can have, it's the wash pump's leaking. I can fit you a new wash pump, or you can refuse a repair and have a new machine. Well, I'm not having a repair on a brand new machine. It should, that's just a bad idea. And it's been pissing all over inside the machine. Who knows what else has been fooked by this fault. So send us another machine. That was Friday. They came this morning.
Oh, right.
So 2 days.
Yeah, nice.
2 days. They came at 7:30 this morning. I was hungover. And so I fit the new dishwasher at 9 a.m. this morning. And so far, so good. It's working.
Yeah.
But after he'd been at like 2:30 till 3:30, I would say it was, I thought, I need to get my hair cut. My hair was doing me head in.
You need to have your face steamed.
Yes. Yeah, get the work. So I go to the Turkish barber, and they do all the shit. They do all the Turkish barber shit with your beard and stuff.
High to your ears and stuff.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. So I goes in, and there's normally two guys. There's Dr. Erskine from Iron Man 1.
That's nominative determinism. Dr. Hareskin, the barber.
He's like a little wiry guy, very slight guy. From, I don't know where he's. I have the feeling it's maybe from Lebanon. He looks kind of Lebanese.
Okay.
And then
good skill.
there's the gorilla, who's this massive guy, bald head, beard.
Where's he from? The Congo. Is that where gorillas are from?
No, I would say he's from, I don't know, I've had to guess. He was probably Saudi Arabia, say, or UAE, somewhere around there. The Middle East. But the last time I was in, they had a third guy.
Okay. What was his name?
He's
Indiscriminate guy.
It kind of looks a bit like Saddam Hussein.
Was it Saddam Hussein?
Thinking about it, he kind of looks like Saddam Hussein. He's kind of older, a bit portly. portly gentleman with he has a beard though. Saddam just had a tash.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so he's in disguise, obviously. Got out of Baghdad and started working for Turkish barbers. So I walks in, and it's Erskine and Saddam. My normal, nothing personal, but I prefer the gorilla. I think he does a better job of the haircut and the beard and everything. Personally, it's a personal preference thing.
I mean, gorillas are famously hairy all over. So
He's really hairy,
you'd
yeah.
know what he was doing.
Dr. Erskine tends to take too much off everything.
Well, even look at your penis.
No, just my hair.
That's a foreskin.
My hair and my beard. So I goes in, and I go in. There's just one. There's just Erskine with someone in the chair. So I go in and I sit down, and then Saddam appears from the door, the side door. He comes
From
in.
his spider hole.
Yeah. He's come to sort me out. He must have been having a break or something, having a brew or something. In fact, he brought a brew with him, so he'd obviously been having a break. So I've never had Saddam cut my hair before, so I go and sit in. And immediately, as soon as I sit in the chair, the gorilla walks in from outside.
Oh.
He'd been on a break. So, typical. And I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
Because he's not cut my hair before. Maybe he'll be really good. I didn't want to say, I'm used to that guy. Can you do it? I was like, no, I won't do that. And the gorilla, he often goes, because this is like 3:45, he goes to pick his kids up from school. I think that's what happens. And so he starts cutting me hair, Saddam. And it's interesting how they have different techers. They all have a different style. They do things slightly differently.
Right.
They do things in slightly different orders. Like this Saddam, when he was sorting out my mustache, he cut my mustache with a pair of scissors.
Yeah.
Whereas the other two guys would use the like a
beard trimmer.
Cutthroat.
Probably no. They all use the cutthroat.
Yeah.
But that's usually like one of the last things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Erskine uses the cutthroat on my widow's peak. That's one of his idiosyncrasies. I feel him doing the cutthroat razor up here at the top of my head, which the other two guys don't do.
Right.
And I would say also with varied levels of English.
Okay.
So Dr. Erskine is pretty fluent.
Right.
The gorilla is a bit less good on the English. And it turns out that Saddam I struggle to understand him.
Right, okay.
So there was one point, the other two guys, they don't ask. They'll just get the razor, and not every time, but sometimes they'll do my nostrils.
Oh, right. Okay.
Nostril hairs. And so I was halfway through the procedure, and Saddam, he looks at me and goes, a nose?
Your nose hairy.
I knew it.
Like ass.
I said, I don't know, does it need doing? He goes, a nose. I was like, I can't tell from here. Does it need doing? Do you think it needs it? Yes, a nose, indeed. Yes.
You
So
sure
I-
saying our nose and not anus?
I smell.
Yeah. So at this point, you're like, I think it was while I was having my beard. The hair's already done. I'm having my beard sorted out. So you've got like a headrest that's put on the chair, and you kind of lean. And I know he's going to grab. It's quite. I don't know if irritating is the right word with the nasal strimmer or whatever. So I close my eyes.
How many other people's noses is that nasal?
Oh, yeah.
Is it kept in Barberside?
Barberside, yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, God.
But so I close my eyes, waiting for the zzz, and I just feel something go up my nose. And I open my eyes, and there's a fucking cotton bud
No,
sticking up.
it didn't do that.
There's a cotton bud sticking out my nostril. I was like, what the fuck? And then the next thing, another cotton bud goes up my other nostril. I open my mouth because my mouth's shut all the way through. Generally, I'm not a mouth breather. So I was like, I'm like breathing through my mouth. I'm like, what the fuck's he doing with these cotton buds? Like, I thought, it's probably some sort of you know, shit on the com. It just melts the nose hairs away or something. So I'll leave him to it, and then he's fucking about with me. I think maybe he was cutthroating my neck or something for a few minutes. I thought, is he going to take these fucking things out or what? And then he stands up and he grabs one of these cotton buds and just goes, yes, and yanks it out. And then he grabs it and goes, yes. And
what does he say yes for?
He loves it so much.
He's trying to. I think he's just preparing you for what's coming. So yeah, I had my nose waxed.
Oh my
for the first time.
How painful was it?
Didn't even feel it, to be fair.
Didn't feel it.
Hardly, no. A very slight burning sensation, maybe.
Are you dead?
Honestly, it done it. No.
Right.
No. So, but it got me thinking. Like, I'm kind of not. I wish I hadn't had it done. Because I think your nose hairs are there for a reason.
Yeah, they're doing a job. Especially in your job. Working on sites and stuff. Yeah.
They're there for a reason to.
Your asbestos filter.
Yeah, and I think bugs and
yeah,
you know, nasties and I think they're probably part of the maybe like a first layer of immune system, kind of.
Just have to grow a massive mustache, cover your nose.
I know, yeah. I'm just trying to see.
Yeah, it's
completely hairless.
That's completely hairless. Nostrils.
You have a hairless nose.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
It's weird. I can hear myself breathing out.
I thought you were going to say you can smell yourself.
That's what the first thing I noticed. There was not an audible noise when I breathed out through my nose.
So it's like, you know, when you plant a forest in front of your house to baffle noise. So that's what it's doing. Those your tree-like nose hairs baffle your breathing, your heavy breathing.
I guess. Yeah.
Wow, new experience. Every day is a school day.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had anything waxed before.
No.
Never had it waxed, no.
All different things, yeah.
Back sack and crap.
Just mainly my back, yeah. My back and maybe like the tops of my arms and stuff. So it just looks like I'm wearing a
tank top,
a t-shirt of hair, but opposite, essentially.
Can't remember. I've got a vague memory of having my chest waxed for an ECG though.
Oh, right.
So I thought they. Yeah, 'cause you have to stick it on. It was only a little. It was little bits.
I'm pretty sure I had someone stuck that on me, and she said, "I'm really sorry." Stuck it on.
It's just like flapping it off.
No, she stuck it on and then had to like rip it off.
I just left the ECG as well.
I can't remember. I think for one of my jobs, I had to have a medical.
Wow.
I think it might have been an NHS job. They made me have a medical, and I had to have some immunisations. I think. I can't remember what maybe mumps or something. I hadn't had my mumps.
Oh, right. Yeah, you didn't get the MMR, did you?
I got some of it.
You got the MM.
Well, it wasn't in one thing, was it?
Oh, I don't know how it works. Back in our day.
Yeah, it was separate. My mum just never took me for my mumps, so I got mumps.
Oh, right. We didn't get the MMR, did we not? Before that came out?
It was separate, yeah. You had a measles, a mumps, and then a rubella separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember her taking me for a polio vaccine because it was on a sugar cube.
I remember drinking one. It was like a pink liquid in a little
toilet duck,
like a little capsulative pink liquid. I remember as a tiny child, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 or something, drinking that. Shit. Yeah.
Lovely.
Less disease.
Well, I've not had polio yet, so there's that.
It's a bad one.
It is.
You say you have bumps, that can be bad as well.
I know, yeah.
I know when you, yeah.
I look like Quagmire.
Giggity.
Yeah, giggity. Good. And like one side went up.
Oh, you've had it, have you? Mumps?
Yeah, one side swelled up, and then the other side swelled up.
Did you get balls issues? Sometimes
I've always had those.
You downstairs get
They just got enlarged.
Yeah, and stayed enlarged.
Yeah.
Gorge.
Yeah. But no, it was fine. I just got it. Dude, I felt very unwell though.
Yeah.
It's like I remember getting flu when I was a little kid, and being like feeling really rough for several days, few days.
Yeah, it's not good.
No.
I don't think I've had it since.
No.
It's because you had strong nose hairs.
Yeah, well, people say you know it when you get the flu. Like
Yeah.
it's like a step up from, your common colds and things. That it does wipe you out and the aches and pain and stuff. So I don't
The
think
old
I've had it.
adage is if you see a £20 note on the floor and you had flu, you wouldn't pick it up.
I would.
What would you do instead, Ben?
You'd probably just keel over.
Right. No, never heard of that adage. That
It's
if,
an old adage.
if you are too ill to pick up money from the street,
Pretty much.
right?
If you see something desirable, you wouldn't move towards it, I think, is the thing, because you'd be so fucked. Not like a cold.
Mm.
Like,
Most people go to work with colds regularly, don't they?
yeah.
Whereas, flu's like,
People still going to work.
I believe so. Yeah. My missus does.
They're big on that now again, aren't they? People going back into the office.
RTO.
Yeah. Got to keep Pret a Manger afloat. The Pret a Manger
Seemed to be-
lobby.
I remember I was talking about that last night.
Yeah.
Was it because Raymondo was having to go back in one day a week or something?
Yeah. It's not too bad, is it?
Humanity.
I know, yeah. Yeah. But it's been quite a big saving, though. I speak to a lot of people who haven't gone back in. Mainly IT people seem to have stayed at home. And it's a big thing to get off your...
Us.
Well, off the books, I guess, isn't it, for a business? Like, if you're renting a building or paying for a building or maintaining a building.
Yeah. Running costs,
Yeah.
Energy.
Mm.
You get people to use their own energy at home
Exactly, yeah.
rather than pay electric bills,
I know, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
heating.
It's just commuting, isn't it? If you used to not commute, commuting is fine if you're doing it all the time and you have been for years and years and years. You kind of get used to it, but it's a bitch.
Going back there, you mean?
Yeah, if I had to go in 5 days a week, I'd be fucked. I won't be able to do anything after work.
Yeah.
I'd be asleep.
Honestly, my missus works at Walton Summit, and sometimes it can take her an hour to get home.
Oh, my
If there's a
God.
crash on M6, and it's an hour.
Wow.
There's always a crash on AMC.
Well, that's the thing. There never used to be, but it seems to be a weekly occurrence now. She's an hour late because of a crash.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just don't go in on that day.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Should we do some housekeeping now?
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
Time.
Get it out of the way.
Okay. I'll do some.
It's housekeeping time. Don't skip this bit. Share the word through Telegram, Facebook,
My arm under the back of the chair. I thought it was comfortable. It just looks weird on camera.
Let's raise the tone.
Gouge his eyes!
We can't do this on our own. Our podcast is in need. Tell your friends and plant a seed. It's housekeeping time. Return some value. It's housekeeping time. Gouge his eyes. It's housekeeping time. Focus your gene. It's housekeeping time. Sign up for the newsletter.
Right, this is the Value for Value podcast. We're behind on the old housekeeping. We haven't done any for a few weeks, have we?
Yeah.
It's a Value for Value podcast. There's no paywalls, no hidden bonus content behind Patreon or whatever. Everything's put out there for free. And all we ask is that if you get some value with it, consider returning some value. There's a myriad of ways of doing this. My favourite way, as ever, is word of mouth. Wherever your presence is felt in the online sphere, Discord servers, Telegram channels, Facebook groups. Share some links if you feel they would be welcomed. And try and help spread the word, get more people involved and becoming producers and contributing to the show and becoming more active rather than a passive consumer. You know, we're here to connect.
A useless eater.
Yeah.
Connection is protection.
Connection is protection.
It is.
Yeah.
And we need a new roadcaster. You can sign up to the newsletter by sending us an email.
Went out 2 years ago. 2 days ago.
It went out 2 days ago. The Rumspringer.
Yeah, so check your spam if you are signed up because it went out on the 1st.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't control your spam filters, so it does rely a little bit on you to check that. But
I send one to my private email and I have our sending address VIP'd and it still goes to spam.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
So check your spam.
So the newsletter, within that newsletter, there's interesting articles and memes and things and lovely stuff. It comes out once a month. There's a sneak preview of the guests that are coming on over the next few weeks. There's also a discount code for our merchandise store, the Amish Loot Chest, from where you may purchase several t-shirt designs and
Such
mug
as this?
designs. Here's one. There's a lemon and Neil. There's a mug. There's a t-shirt. There's other t-shirts. This one's got pig balls. This is another t-shirt. There's t-shirts, there's hoodies, there's mugs, there's other things that we can probably get our hands on. I don't know. We need to understand what people want.
Maybe crochet kits.
Yeah, I was
That's
thinking
popular, I believe, crocheting.
Yeah, maybe some wildflower seeds. You know,
That
where
would
they're
be nice.
impregnated into paper, and you can just and it'd have the Amish
Impregnated.
Inquisition on.
That's an unusual
seeds.
That's an unusual.
Impregnated into paper.
Mm.
With the Amish Inquisition logo on, and then you just plant that in your garden when you're doing your rewilding operations.
Mate, when you're trying to tackle global warming.
Absolutely. Everyone needs to do their bit.
Yeah.
We don't have any of them, by the way. It's just a weird thought experiment. We'll see what we can do.
We'll add that to the merch
Let
store.
us know. Let us know. How can people let us know stuff? How can you get
They
in
could
contact?
email us at theamishinquisition@gmail.com.
They could do that.
They could connect with us on the multitude of social media platforms that we populate.
They do.
Such as Instagram and Facebook.
Yes. Yes.
And YouTube.
The YouTubes, yes. Very
I'm pretty
popular.
sure our email address is on the YouTube as well.
Should
So
be-
spam us if you want.
Yeah, do it. Let
And
us
then,
know.
and then if you do really spam us, we'll just block you. Block and deny you. I believe that's the term, isn't it?
Denial.
Denial, yeah.
Podcast denial.
You were talking about impregnating seeds a minute ago.
I was, yeah.
You can't say anything.
I'm going to get blocked.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be unimpregnated.
Okay.
I think people should join up to the Element server.
Is that another way?
Sometimes I cast a vacant eye over the chat rooms. Phil's in there quite frequently. It's another way for you to contribute. You could send us news articles. You can make guest suggestions, which we try and work on, and then quite 50% will reply to me.
It's a good hit rate.
Yeah, but we get some good suggestions in there that we've managed to make. You can request Focus Chi. What's that Focus Chi request that came up before? Is that from the previous episode? From
Someone.
I grabbed it.
So if your chi is depleted, or if you got something big coming up, you know, like an operation or an exam or something like that, you can request some chi for us. And we have had a chi request from
Rebecca with a K. So Quebeca would like a
Quebeca
little
K.
magic chi for her wisdom tooth.
Any chance I could have a little magic chi for my wisdom tooth, please? Laughing face, tooth emoji, star emoji.
I mean, that's good use of emojis. Some I've never seen.
So now you have to find the jingle on the board.
It's queued up.
Oh, it is. It's there.
Right, so everybody, eyes down, lock in for the
focus
focus chi for Rebecca with a K.
Lovely stuff. I could see a little glint in Chi 3PO's eyes.
Oh yes.
And just when we were delivering that chi,
As we projected the chi through.
that's how you know it's good.
It's good chi. That
Yep.
earthy, chunky chi.
It's not liquid chi.
The chunky chi.
Healthy, solid chi. Oh.
Hey.
So yeah, you can also, if you do send us any news articles and stuff, we didn't mention before, but we would really appreciate it if they were time stamped.
I'm pretty sure I said that.
Did you? We said it before anyway. It's common sense, really.
It is common sense. I believe we've had 2 show artwork submissions as well. So look, 2, Ben.
2. Oh my God.
Who should we do first?
Let's do the new guy.
Phil. So here's Phil's. Now I don't know if people noticed in the type. Oh my God! Why did you have to do that behind me? I'm pretty sure that was picked up on the mic.
Gross.
Oh, it stinks. As well, for fuck's sake!
You can tell this new guy's an amateur. He's done a real nonsense bit of artwork here. I can see where he's tried to put in the aeroplanes and the man.
Is that the has he taken the text from Top Gun?
I think so. Oh, the Marcus Gibson text.
Now, in the show titles, did you notice that it was animated again this week?
I did
with live explosions.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
He's
taking it to the next level, isn't he?
Yeah.
It was like hyper real.
I know.
So,
Almost too good.
Solid effort. So we got Marcus there. The RAF story they tried to erase, and then we've got like a radar screen overlaid over some World War II looking silhouetted bombers.
I believe they're Lancasters.
Maybe, probably Bancasters if it's an AI generated image.
Maybe, yeah.
So
5 engines.
That's Phil's. I believe he's called.
Okay, good.
And then we've had one more from Gav, long-time contributor.
Gav Scott.
Oh, look, he's done it so we could do it side to...
Oh, yeah, we could do a comparison.
And there we've got the RAF...
story. It's a bit dark, that text.
The RAF
Gav.
story they tried to erase.
I like the Amish guy. He's got an Amish guy there in silhouette.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, what's he put into AI for that?
Well, Gav, if you're listening, I did message you on the Element to say what models did you use to generate this stuff, because I'm always looking for new free things to use.
To
generate images for thumbnails and stuff. So let me know.
Yeah.
Because I think it's quite effective. Again, yeah, I mean, what I would do, and I'm being hypercritical here, is I would ask for the image to be generated without text, and then add that in separately, just so you can manipulate it and make it contrast a bit more.
Enhance,
rotate, magnify the text. But I like it. I like that artwork. It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
So
which one are we going for?
Gav's.
We'll pick Gav's.
Yeah.
Right, producer credit heading your way, Gav. Episode 422, artist.
Yeah, keep it up. Good work.
Nice.
If you're on YouTube, sub, comment, like, smash the bell. Hype us. Be a member. Not in real life, but of the channel. Leave us a review. Or send us a comment, and we'll read it out if it's particularly offensive, or you're pointing out a mistake.
Yeah, but don't be too harsh. Oh, you can be. It's fine. We'll read them out anyway,
or
ignore them. So yeah, birthdays, guest suggestions.
That's it.
That's about it.
I think we're done.
Buy us a coffee.
What's the best way to become a producer?
Money.
Keep the mics hot, keep spinning the reel.
doing us right. Can you be the one to keep us alive? Give us value, just press play. We slay, asking you today.
Yeah, if you scroll down to the show notes, you'll find a PayPal link there. You sign up for a one-time donation or a recurring one. If you're not a fan of PayPal, you can always buy us a coffee, as you mentioned, Ben.
Feel the steel strings, the electric roar. Your donations are what we're fighting for. Banging heads, we stand united as one. Can you value flames of your support? Have just begun.
Yeah, your support is greatly appreciated. And with that said, I think it's about time we thank the producers for episode 422, is it?
Oh, it is.
It's 422, yeah. Let's see who we've got. Producers for episode 422. Where are we? We have Helen from Berkshire, Sally Thompson, Rona Kesson, Matthew Chin, Simon Meal, the Russian, and our artist, Gav Scott. Thank you.
You are.
They are.
Yeah.
So amazing. And their love, literally, the best mate.
You are extremely cool, guys.
The dwarf, the
Current, grape,
the doctor of thugonomics,
Homophobe. The wind.
Giant fucking lenses.
Chest feeding.
Communist.
based sigma chad,
Corn pop. Cunt.
The baby penis.
Inner asshole.
These clockwork clowns are
the dime bar,
The number 11.
the vegan on the bus,
Blind man.
the big chungus, the cripple and the mother.
Sonny Pickering.
From hell. Bring it on.
Are you retarded?
I don't get it, never will.
I'm a blind man. Because I can smell her. I can smell her.
Happy birthday, Hugh Janus.
I'm too weak. Don't kill me, please.
Yes, thanks for your support for another week. It means the world to us. Cheers.
It's time to big up the man Dems. Yo.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, no problem.
Wonderful. Wonderful effort.
So amazing.
Brilliant group effort.
Yeah. Give yourselves a pat on the
I
back.
thought it went quite well considering we've not done any housekeeping for a few weeks. I thought that was quite
Yeah.
smooth.
Yes,
I think so.
You know.
Wish I had something up my ass. Well, smooth.
We've got a couple of end of show ourselves as well, which we haven't
Really?
done for ages. Yeah, because we've
Been fucking about.
been fucking about, fucking it off,
Tossing it off.
tossing it off, phoning it in
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Wanking a dog.
Wow.
Wow. Dishwasher man came on
How would that prompt you to?
Dishwasher man came. I'll tell you for why. Dishwasher man came. I had to put Zusi poo outside,
Uh-oh.
and he was crying at the back door because he wanted to see what Dishwasher man was doing. I thought I made Dishwasher man a brew, and I said I'll have a brew and sit on back step with dog because he's crying, and his fucking lipstick were out. He wanted to bum him. He wanted to bum the dishwasher guy. That's why he was crying. Yeah. Hence,
Why was he aroused?
Hence, why Wank the Dog inspired that telling of that tale.
Is that what you had to do?
I
in order
didn't
to-
relieve him. No.
Right, okay.
No, I mean, get everywhere, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
All over. I'd imagine he has thick streams.
Has he not been
Has it been done?
done?
Yeah, they still have jizz though, don't they? Or is the jizz always in the balls?
No.
The pee is stuck.
Because he weeps.
Oh God.
He'll weep a bead of jizz.
No.
So where's that coming from?
I think you can still have.
Coming from.
I don't know. I don't know.
You made Ben wear slanty glasses. He's had enough. You can't take it.
Where else do you get content like this on the internet, man?
Well, yeah. Nowhere.
No.
No. You'd have to go pretty far down, wouldn't you?
To plumb the depths.
Yeah. Talk about that.
So yeah, ISOs. I've got 2 end of show ISOs. This is how we end the show. Generally, we have an isolated clip that's been picked up in the media over the preceding 7 days, and I have 2 to choose from. First one is Gape.
Gape at the majesty of it.
Is that the drinker?
Gape at the majesty of it.
Why would you gape at the majesty?
Fuck's sake, you cunt.
I don't know. I think he's. I think.
Gulp.
I know your brain went to a gaping arsehole, but he's talking about a mouth agape. Gape.
Yeah, but
jaw dropping.
Well,
not arse spreading.
Is it not?
Gape at the majesty of it.
Bend over. Oh my gosh! I've been sent on a total like homosexual deviant thread in my head now.
Why?
I'm totally misinterpreting because you said gape. Why would you gape at the majesty?
That's what I mean.
And because you're thinking about bumholes, and he just puts the clip into completely different context, doesn't it?
Gape at the majesty of it.
A raging stun collinges everywhere.
Yeah, it's just like, ooh, gosh.
Wow.
Respect, rum boy.
The majesty.
Yeah.
Gape at the majesty of it.
I'm the whore of Babylon.
Are we not? I thought he was trying to say gawp. Gawping. No. Would you? You don't gawp at the majesty, do you? That's like a. No. But mouth agape. At the majesty.
Yeah.
Of.
That. Whatever he was talking about. He's probably talking about Mando and Grogu, maybe, or something.
Yes.
So that's number 1.
Gape at the majesty of it.
And the second one is garbage.
What an irrelevant pile of garbage, man.
Pile of garbage, man.
What an irrelevant pile of garbage, man.
Garbage man.
There's a bit of synth at the start of that as well.
There is a little bed.
What an irrelevant pile of garbage, man.
It's a YouTuber, so he has like a lot of YouTubers have beds of music over the underneath or so under the video audio.
Okay.
So I couldn't trim that off.
What an irrelevant pile of garbage, man.
I think YouTubers are an irrelevant pile of garbage men in general. So,
well, we've 2 to choose from. 2 YouTubers to choose from.
Let's go with the gaping arsehole.
Gape at the majesty of it.
Pile of cocks.
Right, gape it is then.
Can we just make a note of that for Ben's latest clip?
Oh, I missed that.
What he just said then?
What was it? What did you say?
What did you say, Ben?
What did he say, Matt?
Say it again.
Do you think I'm stupid?
You tell us about your dog story again.
I totally missed it.
Right, it was too late.
We need a timestamp. Hang on. Can I maybe put something in the chat?
Can you see those?
I tend to have it set up so that the live chat is recurring on rewatching the video. So
right.
Hopefully that'll show up. Why is there? And there's no one in the chat. I went to restream before to see like has everyone gone to sleep because like there's no one in the chat. Talking, but yeah, as maybe restream's frozen and we're not actually streaming. Who knows?
The missing is golden content.
Yeah, the gaping,
missing the
gaping arseholes and dog sperm.
Yeah,
good. So that's it. Housekeeping done.
Lovely.
We've done it.
Have you enjoyed your extended bank holiday weekend so far?
I'm just recovering today, basically.
I had a house day, which I have not done, and I sat on the sofa all day.
Did you wear a house coat?
Well, I only got up at 11, sorry. I didn't wear a house coat, no, I wore
11?
Half the day's gone, man.
I know.
God.
I know.
Dishwasher fitted by then.
Exactly. So I got up at 11, made the kids dinner, and then I sat on the sofa. So my sister came round with a birthday present for one of the kids, and then they watched... one of a Mario movie, the kids.
Oh, yeah.
The first one?
That would be the only one that's available. Yes.
Oh, they didn't go out to see the new one?
No, on the sofa. Yeah, they watched it. Yeah, and then we watched Liverpool and Man United. Then we had tea.
And you had a roast chicken dinner like me as well?
Roast chicken, breast.
Do you have a leg?
I'm not greedy. Okay. No, I'm a breast man.
You can have both.
No.
You can't.
You can't. That would be half a chicken. A breast and a leg.
You could have a bit of...
Well, someone has to have the leg.
Well, yeah. My son had one and my wife had the other one.
Okay.
Is that okay?
It's fine. It's acceptable.
Right.
Could they breed a chicken with more legs?
Maybe. Maybe they should make spider chickens.
That makes sense.
Mm.
That'd be the best use of CRISPR technology.
Spider chickens.
Crispy spider chickens.
Mm.
Yeah, if people like leg, then...
I bet that's happening. I bet that happens in China already. I bet there are 6-legged chickens walking around in China.
No, China's a lovely place.
Yeah?
I've not seen any 6-legged animals on my travels anywhere.
Have you now?
Do they even exist?
You could mutilate a centipede, maybe.
What about a fly? Does that have 6 legs?
Is it an animal, though? Is an insect an animal?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the animal kingdom.
Mm.
Yeah. It's not, it's just a different
phylum.
What do you call it? Like a branch, no?
Yeah.
Reptiles, mammals, insects.
Yeah.
I would say an insect's an animal. I'm trying to think of Jeff Goldblum in The Fly. Did he have 6 legs in the end?
Oh, I don't know.
I love that bit where he just vomits. He's trying to talk to her rationally, and then he just sort of vomits all over himself.
It's gross.
Happens all the time.
It's Cronenberg, isn't it? That Fly. That Fly film's good.
Is it called Body Shock?
Body Horror.
Body Horror. That's it.
Yeah, it was one of a front runner of body horror, wasn't it? 1982 maybe? 84, 82, somewhere around there. Classic film. Brilliant film.
What's that other one where they're in space and it's the dog and the flamethrower? It's not the Thing. Are they in space?
I've never seen The
Thing.
The Kurt Russell one. I've never seen it.
There's a thing in the
I've heard it's fantastic.
Well. Scary as shit when you... I would rather was
10.
10.
No, I've never seen that.
Oh, we should do a watching of the Thing.
A watching of the Thing?
Yeah.
A thing watching.
That's the title of the episode.
Yeah, maybe. Can you give us a critical breakdown of it then?
Not from my 10-year-old brain. It has like a...
Is it a John Carpenter?
I think so.
The Thing, yeah. Yeah. Adaptation, no?
Is he like the guy who did he do the first Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street? Am I making that up?
Carpenter, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Do you know?
Do you remember?
Hellraiser? No.
Didn't he do that awful Mars film with the sexy lady
Lopez
from Species?
Oh right,
Natasha Henschke?
Something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
From is it Sphere? Not Sphere. Species.
Yeah.
Natasha Hendridge.
Is it like the Red Planet? That one.
I think it's called Ghosts of Mars.
Oh,
it's got Marilyn Manson in it.
Has it?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's
some kind of weird fever dream that you've had. Ben.
Probably is.
It's a terrible film.
Bet there was some gaping in that.
Probably.
There's not been, considering how close Mars is, there's not been a lot of films about it. There's The Martian and Total Recall and
John Carpenter's
Ghosts on Mars, and what else?
The Martian.
That's The Martian.
Oh.
Yeah, consider all the hype about Mars, like.
Total. Did you say Total Recall?
Yeah. 3. I can't think any other Mars films.
I'm sure there's loads more than that.
Have there been more films about more distant celestial bodies?
No, I don't think there has there?
We watched Ad Astra recently.
Oh, I've not. I don't think I've seen that. Has it got all right in it?
All right.
That's
No,
it,
that's
all right.
Stella.
It's Brad Pitt, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought it was a bit boring, that film.
It was a bit weird. There's like...
Clooney direct.
I can't remember who's directed it.
Oh, I don't know. He fills off a big tower at one point, and it's so big that it's in space. So it's a bit like.
Is it not off on a moon of like you? I'm going to say Uranus. More gaping.
Neptune, I believe.
Is that what it is?
His dad's out there doing a weird mission. And he's gone nuts and wants to send in like flares or something. It's not as good as Project Hail Mary.
I've not seen it yet, but I've heard very good things.
Did you go to the cinema to watch that, Benjamin?
I did, yes. Yeah. I'm going to watch The Devil Wears Prada 2 tomorrow.
Oh. How many mats would you give the space one?
4 mats.
4 mats?
4 mats.
People are saying it's been a bit of a sleeper hit.
I like the book, so the book was really good.
Oh.
And I wanted the film to be,
faithful,
as I recall the book. Yeah. And it did a good job, to be honest. There were a couple of points where I thought, And there's a couple of continuity errors where he wears his glasses like kind of on a weird, on a wonk. And they were just like, on a wonk. And they were just like, they were there, and then they cut away, and it's someone else talking on the table, and then they like changed, and he wasn't wearing it. It was noticeable by me, an idiot. So therefore,
continuity error. Wow.
Yeah.
They're not often caught on first watch.
Right. Yeah.
Are they continuity errors? It's normally after the fact, people going through it with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah. Well, give me a YouTube channel.
I've heard it's a good family film. That it's good for the kids.
It's good. Yeah. The alien's good in it. He's pretty cool. Rocky. Not how I imagined him, which was another sort of.
Wow, this is it. This is why I wanted to read the Doom books before I watched the film.
Yeah. But, still he was all right. It's good. Then a bit at the end was good. I thought for a minute it might be different from the book and he might end up doing something else, but he didn't, and it was true to the book.
Don't spoil it for me because I might watch it.
You should watch it.
Have you seen it?
It's good.
No, I'd like to go and see it, I think, yeah. I think it would be a good one to see.
Yep.
An original film, well, it's based on a book.
Well, it's just not a sequel, prequel,
That's what I mean.
reboot, or a live action reboot.
Yeah.
That's what Disney seems to be obsessed with it as well at the minute.
Yep.
I've heard great things about the live action Snow White. About Gal Gadot's performance. It's
because it's
legendary.
So awful.
Yeah, but I've heard that it's worth
watching it just to see how hammy she is in it. Yeah. I've seen some clips of how bad.
Have you seen Snow White?
No, I haven't.
No.
I've seen clips of her like trying to be, and I think
Kal-El, no.
Kal-El. Is he
the famous,
Superman's dad?
It's a famous clip from
from Superman.
Is it from not Joy Division? What they called the DC Avengers?
Oh, what they called them?
Thunderbolt.
Not Thunderbolts, you plonker.
Justice League.
Justice League, yeah.
Not Joy Division, Justice League.
Joy Division is something completely different.
Yeah. What is the Joy Division? That's based on.
There's something
I
to do.
thought he was going to mention it when he mentioned comfort women in the Korean War. There was some sexy Nazi thing. Joy Division.
That was a Joy Division, yeah.
Don't know don't know too much about it except uniforms and stuff.
I don't know if I've seen. I think the only DC movies I've seen are maybe Aquaman. I'm not sure I've seen any of the others.
I think I might have watched the Supermans.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think I haven't watched the latest one, but I've watched all of the other ones. I quite like the one with.
I've seen Wonder Woman as well.
Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor and Brandon Routh.
Right.
I quite like that one.
I just don't like Superman as a character.
It's too one-dimensional.
Too OP.
Yeah. He is, yeah. That is the issue, isn't it?
What are his flaws? His character flaws.
What's his kryptonite?
Yeah.
No, I don't mean his physical flaws. I mean his character flaws. That's what makes characters interesting.
His red kryptonite.
Doesn't he get a bit angry? Isn't he got like because he's raised by humans, he's inherently flawed.
Don't know. No, that's the whole point of him, isn't he? That he isn't, except in Superman 3 when he has the red kryptonite, or 4.
What about Superman and Lois, or whatever that was? The New Adventures of Superman.
I used to love
Series.
that on a Saturday morning.
It was good.
Dean Cain?
Dean Cain, yeah.
Terry Hatcher.
That went into some mad lore eventually.
Did it?
Where you like, I'm sure there's like time travel involved in alternate realities and things.
Really?
Yeah, and how they got together and yeah,
God.
it was bizarre in the end.
Didn't it used to come on after going live on a Saturday morning?
It did. Yeah, it used to be on in the evening, like on a Saturday evening as prime time. It used to be, and then they got moved because it wasn't as popular. Yeah, to be like on in the morning. Yeah, for like part of children's. But it was. I'm sure some kind of like interdimensional being came into it, like Q off.
Jean-Luc.
Or like Madam Web or something like that from Spider-Man.
I started watching Madam Web, and it's so funny.
That's
funny.
another one that's supposed to be like hilariously bad.
Yeah, it was. I don't know why. I think maybe I had to take the kids to bed, so I stopped it. I got maybe an hour in. But God, it's funny.
Yeah,
well, unintentionally funny. But.
What happened to that Wonder Man thing?
I don't know. You're the only one who watched it. I think
I didn't. I've not watched it. I just saw a trailer.
Saw
for
the
it.
trailer.
Ben Kingsley, you've got Disney Plus now. You
I have it for a month. Yeah, I'm not going to watch it. I think that's the problem. Is people are getting rid of Disney Plus, so they're not watching this shit. It's like they're not going to do homework for a Mando and Grogu film.
No,
or whatever next Marvel film it is.
I don't even know.
Well, it's Doomsday, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's Doomsday, but I think that's probably going to be a hot mess. But who knows?
You decide.
Go and see it if you want.
There's another Toy Story film coming out.
Oh God,
Toy Story 5.
Dildo. It's about dildos this time.
What's wrong with you, Ben?
What?
Every timestamp that one.
I don't think it's worth it.
No, it's not as good as the other stuff. The back catalogue.
Toy Story's a very old franchise now.
Yeah, but I think every film has been good. I think that Toy Story 4 was brilliant.
Do you think people are coming in, like young people are coming into Toy Story at Toy Story 5 and finding it and then going back to the original Toy Stories?
Maybe. I mean, my kids watched them all. I enjoyed them all. And I remember I went to the cinema to watch. There was a big thing about that, wasn't it? Because it was the first fully computer-generated animation.
Was it? Toy Story?
I think that was released. There was so if you watch Aladdin back, there's parts of that are
CG.
Yeah. But that one, yeah, is the first one, I think. There was a big thing about it. I think it was in the mid-90s, wasn't it? Like 30 years ago. Yeah. But anyway. Something to look forward to in June.
When's the new Harry Potter series coming out? Everyone excited for
Christmas,
that?
I think.
Is it Christmas? Of course it's Christmas.
Yeah, because HBO have the rights to the movies now, don't they? They were on Netflix for a long time, I think. And now it's HBO Max if you want to watch the Harry Potter movies.
Who owns that? Is it part of that Paramount thing now? They bought Warner Brothers, didn't they? Larry Allison's son.
Is it Hulu or something? They've come together. HBO Max and Hulu or something.
Yeah,
on Now TV.
It's like they wrap TNT Sports in with it as well. So like TNT Sports is now on HBO.
Right.
Can't have anything nice unless you got.
You can't just get one of them Amazon sticks, man.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah. I've heard rumours about those types of things.
I've heard they were, yeah.
Terrible rumours.
Yeah.
Well, very good.
Is the sun getting low?
I think it is. What time are we on? There's some twos up there.
Yeah. I need to go and get some bread and milk.
Oh, you left it a bit late.
I have to go to Morrison's petrol station.
Is that 24 hours?
Mm.
Wow. Bend over. Gape in there.
I need some petrol as well. I've not bought petrol for a month. I brimmed it when the Iran war started.
God. Zip, zip.
And now I'm going to have to spend, is it like £2 a litre? Yeah.
No.
Is it not?
Nah, that'd be fine.
Right, okay. I just put 20 quid in then. Be fine.
2 litres.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to eat some things, I think.
I know, I'm a
hungry.
bit peckish now.
Good.
Yeah.
I think I've got now I've had my hair of the dog, I feel a bit better.
Good.
Less sick.
Recovery.
I might buy some snacks.
Get some decent sleep.
Some meat-based snacks.
There's some in here.
Yeah. Those meatsters still in there.
What time's that Morrison shut down road, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I forgot that one's even here.
There's Sainsbury's, isn't there, on there now as well?
It used to be 10, didn't it? I think the one that was near us.
Right, I don't know.
Right, are you going to go for a wander?
No, I'm sure we've got junk in that I can gorge myself on.
Yeah.
Maybe. You know what I'm going to do? What I might do is get some hedgehog bread.
What's that? Tiger bread?
Tiger bread, sorry, not hedgehog bread. And toast it. And I'm going to get some of those plastic cheese slices.
Oh, fuck off.
And make what would you call it? Like
a heart attack sandwich?
Yeah,
An abomination?
A scumbag toasty. Scumbag toasty.
I've had a toasty for years. A grilled cheese, you might say, in America.
I mean, you loosely call it cheese.
Yeah. Paste.
Yeah, it must have it must be just filled with MSG and umami.
Yeah.
Vibes.
The vibes are slay.
That's where the taste is.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's another hour of top content.
Yeah, we're into May.
Yeah.
4 more guests this month.
I know it's a busy month, actually, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
See you next week.
Right, bye then.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.
Congratulations on becoming a doctor of thugonomics. Fuck's sake, you cunt. Oh, Willie G. Chungus never seems so sus. Events to electrical.
Are you not entertained? It was lovely, it really did.
They're looking and thinking, and they know they're not daft. They're looking at this team we're supporting and we're fighting every week for. Give it up. They gave up.
I want to do an aside, since I mentioned Brian Brushwood and you went on and on about the vasectomy.
Epic dub.
I like what you got. Good job.
Enough!
I am going to aim for the prostate in the men.
Gape at the majesty of it.